Hey everyone! So I've got something super exciting to share with you today on Paul Graham Essays, the AI podcast series. This is episode 5, and we're diving deep into how to start Google. I know, sounds pretty ambitious, right? But stick with me here because what we're about to explore is absolutely fascinating. Paul Graham recently gave this incredible talk to 14 and 15-year-olds about startups. And, well, it's basically a blueprint for how to potentially create the next big thing. And I mean, like, really big. You know what's really interesting? He starts by completely flipping the script on what most of us think about jobs. The first mind blowing thing Paul talks about is that you don't actually have to get a traditional job. I mean, there's this whole other path where you can start your own company. Now, he's quick to point out that it's not about avoiding work. If anything, you'll probably work harder than you would at a regular job. But, and this is important, you get to be your own boss and work on something you're genuinely passionate about. Now, let's get into the meat of what it actually takes to potentially start the next Google. Paul breaks it down into 3 essential components, and I'm going to break these down one by one because they're absolutely crucial. First up is our technology skills. And here's what's really cool. You don't necessarily need to focus on what you think might be valuable in the future. Like, should you learn about gene editing or maybe AI? The answer is surprisingly simple. Just follow your interests because, and this is so important, you'll always work harder on something you genuinely care about. And you know what's really interesting about this? Paul uses Steve Jobs as this amazing example. Like, Jobs studied calligraphy as a teenager just because he was interested in it. And that seemingly random interest, well, it ended up being crucial to Apple's success with the Macintosh computer. Isn't that just mind blowing? The second key component is coming up with ideas. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because once you're good at technology, Paul says you start seeing these dotted outlines around things that are missing in the world. You begin noticing problems that need fixing. Take Facebook, for example. Mark Zuckerberg basically just saw a problem at Harvard. They didn't have an online Facebook for the whole university. And he thought, well, this is stupid. I can fix this in one night. And well, we all know how that turned out. And then there's the third component, finding co-founders. And you're probably sensing a pattern here because, yes, the way to find co-founders is through projects. Working on projects with people is the only real way to know if you work well together. And this is where Paul drops some real talk about why doing well in school matters. Because getting into a good university puts you where the best potential co-founders are. What I find absolutely fascinating about all of this is how simple it sounds when you break it down. Build stuff, do well in school, that's basically it, but it's the execution that matters, right? And the passion behind it. So, as we wrap up this episode, I just want to emphasize something really important that Paul points out. The best startups often grow out of projects that weren't meant to be startups at all. They come from people just following their interests and trying to solve problems they care about. It's not about trying to come up with the next big thing. It's about building something that you and your friends would actually want to use. And that's really the key takeaway here. Start with your interests, build things, find like-minded people, and who knows, maybe you'll end up creating something as impactful as Google. This has been episode 5 of Paul Graham Essays, the AI podcast series. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode.